Hello everyone, Dean Dwyer with you for Bible Bites. If you've been watching a number of these video series, might I say that for believers and seasoned believers who know their Bibles, you probably have a fair idea of the answers to the questions before I even give them. But every now and then, I like to throw a tricky one in there just to keep us on our toes. And so our question for today is, who is Chloe? Now, at this point in time, you might be racking your brain going from Genesis to Revelation, madly trying to think of where you might have heard the name Chloe in the Bible. Well, you need to go to 1 Corinthians, and 1 Corinthians 1:11 in particular. Doesn't sound like a biblical name, but Chloe is actually mentioned. And the passage says, "For it has been declared to me concerning you, my brethren, by those of Chloe's household, that there are contentions among you." And so in this passage, if you read on a little further, what Paul is doing is addressing some quarrelling in the Corinthian church. And it was Chloe's people, as recorded, that had reported these quarrels to the apostle. So, lest you think otherwise though, she wasn't gossiping about them. This wasn't idle gossip, but this was about getting Paul's assistance in order to resolve a problem within the church. And oftentimes, when we have problems within the church, sometimes it's good to reach out to other people, other very trusted pastors and Christians, in order to come in and bring some objectivity to the argument and really help to resolve the problems within the church. So this is quite simply what Chloe and her household were doing as she introduced Paul. So in the next few verses, we do see the source of the quarrel. And what was happening is that people were divided over whom they should follow for spiritual leadership. And some were saying, well, I follow Paul, and others were saying, I follow Peter or Cephas, as it is written. Others were saying, well, I follow Apollos or I follow Christ. And so the Corinthian Christians were segmenting themselves unnecessarily. So Paul responds by reminding them that Christ is not divided and that Jesus is the only name under heaven which all believers are saved and baptized in. So then he finishes off by saying that Christ had appointed him, Paul, to preach the gospel, but not with wisdom and eloquence, lest the cross of Christ be emptied of its power. So in response to the concerns of Chloe's household, Paul points out that Christ is the one who saves and that the power of the gospel is his power. Romans 1:16. Paul, Peter, Apollos, they were all preaching Christ's message, and believers should always follow Christ as the shepherd rather than getting caught up following men whose sometimes eloquent words often create competition one with another. So there should be no quarrelling, there should be no quibbling over who baptized whom or which preacher is more gifted in the word. The eloquence or the wisdom of man is not the point of the gospel. The point of the gospel is the person and work of Jesus Christ, particularly in giving his life on the cross. And so what we read that in Christ's name, that we are baptized in, and it is Christ who is the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. 1 Corinthians 1:24-25. So, Chloe and those of her households, well, they were insightful enough to perceive that divisions were occurring. And so the tendency of the Corinthian church, which was to elevate men above God, needed to be addressed, and so that's why they wrote to Paul seeking help. Well, we might know anything else about Chloe, but we do know this. In seeking the assistance of the proper authority in the church, which in this case was an apostle, Chloe and her household demonstrated that they were peacemakers, and might I say that the modern church needs more of them.